guys, my name is Alethea, this is Gotcha Covered, and today I'm going to be giving my take on designer labels, top designers, and their future in fashion from a fashion student. I'm majoring in fashion design currently at Arizona State University. Love it, love my program, learning lots of things. But the main thing that I get asked about my program and about my degree when I tell somebody that I'm majoring in fashion is, who is your favorite designer? Which is awkward because I don't have a favorite. And for some reason, people usually get upset when I tell them that. It's gotten to the point where I've decided to just throw out a few names just to get people to leave me alone about this question. So like Pierre Moss, Anna Sui, something like that. And it's because I genuinely do like these designers. In fact, I'm wearing Pierre Moss right now, courtesy of Rent the Runway. I cannot afford his stuff. And then after I say any designer, people don't normally ask any questions about the designer, like, why do I like them? What do they do? What inspires you about what they do? Literally any questions. It's just, who's your favorite designer? Okay, thank you. You have a favorite designer. We can move on now, which I don't really understand, but I've been thinking it over and I believe I understand why people do it. It's because people, or at least most people, associate fashion with expensive and famous designer brands. Very intentional. Watch my video about designer labels on TikTok and how they reach to young audiences to solidify their place in culture. Recently though, I think we're seeing a shift on how people view fashion and fashion trends for multiple reasons, but I'll just start with one that's pretty easy to understand. I'm sure that you've noticed that what people are wearing on a fashion runway and what people wear on the street, people that you know, are two totally different worlds. Most people not only care about wearing clothes that let them show their personality with people around them, but also is a practical choice for their lifestyle and climate. Obviously, I still appreciate a great piece of clothing if it comes from an expensive designer, but I think especially now, true fashion is pulling further and further away from the runway. Fashion has been a trickle-up system for a while now for a few reasons, some of which you've probably noticed. The retail apocalypse, it's been called. This one's hard to miss. Malls are closing all around us, storefronts are shutting down, and then 2020, the pandemic obviously made that a lot worse. It's destroying retail even quicker. And not only that, we're seeing a surge in people getting into DIY and sewing. And then on a larger scale, obviously wealth inequality is getting more dramatic. So less people are able to afford $1,000 pieces of clothing. Literally the only reason I'm wearing this is because I'm renting it, not because I'm purchasing it. And I'm not the only one who's been noticing this shift in fashion, how it's becoming more of a trickle-up system. I got an opportunity to hear from Rebecca Kleinman. She's a fashion writer for Women's Wear Daily. She came and spoke to one of our fashion classes and we got to ask as students a bunch of questions in the chat and she ended up answering one of mine and this is what she had to say.
Alethea asks, when writing, do you try to give smaller brands coverage and exposure as well as the popular brands? And how do you choose whether an emerging designer is worth writing about?
I do, but I get a lot of flack for it from my editors. They make me fight for everything I write about. Like I have to explain to them why it's important. And a lot of times, I mean, I hate to say it, but it has to do with advertising where, you know, why do you think you see so many stories on Chanel? It's because Chanel is a major advertiser or an LVMH brand. And it's sad, but it's true. Small brands just don't have the ad budget to have any power. With that said, I'd say 25% of the time I can sneak an emerging brand in and it really makes me happy. And I don't do it though just because they're emerging. It has to be good. If I believe in someone, I think they're doing great stuff and they're going places, I'll definitely write about them. That's my favorite part of the job is finding the new stuff. I mean, everyone knows Chanel. It's like, who cares? And
I think you answered this, but I like that Alethea thought of this also, is why do fashion writers rely on top designer runways for fashion trend predictions, even though fashion is much more of a trickle-up system, you know, which I completely...
And I agree with her. I mean, way before, you know, things coming from the street, we all know that now, but a lot of, I mean, it's a sad fact, but a lot of smaller designers are being copied. And they don't have the money to sue these huge corporations. And I've seen it time and again. I know a designer in Miami who Jeremy Scott copied.
We just talked about Jeremy Scott and his Moschino show.
Yeah, I mean, he copied everything, the colors, the pattern, everything. But doesn't have the money to sue him.
That's
I see that all the time. It's a sad fact, but I do think that young minds and not just young, but like people who are fresh to the industry, maybe they're, because they aren't inundated with this same stuff all the time. They have a fresh, just like any industry, they like a new chef, they might have a fresh approach to cooking that will change things.
Another huge thing to keep in mind is that WGSN, one of the largest fashion forecasters in the world, gets their information about future trends from consumer buying patterns and how people around the world are styling fashion, not necessarily runway fashion. Even if that contributes to it, it's not really the deciding factor. In fact, a year ago, I bought a masterclass taught by Marc Jacobs. I'm sure you've heard of him. He's a very well-renowned designer. Most people have at least seen his name thrown around. And even Marc Jacobs mentioned that a lot of the time, he's inspired by life and the people around him, how he sees certain garments being styled on the streets. And then he will create a high fashion version of that based off of what's already happening with his own twist, obviously. So even designers who are at the top of their game are not separate from life around them. So you've heard my take on this and now we're on the same page, but a lot of the people that I run into who want nothing to do with fashion don't like it because they view fashion as some weird dictatorship where Vogue magazine is pulling on the strings and telling people what to wear and people are just blindly following those trends. And that just doesn't line up with reality. So how I interpret fashion is it is a cultural archive of how people want to be perceived individually, and then we see larger patterns when lots of people like the way a certain style helps them feel. So fashion is what they call an applied art, which means it is art that is designed to functionally fit into our lives and add beauty. Think like architecture and interior design. This would contrast with fine art, which would include things like paintings and sculptures. Out of all of the applied arts, fashion is my favorite because it's the most personal. It's the art of the people. Each person kind of has a say in how fashion is going depending on how we're styling things. And it helps us feel connected with other people when we see people styling something similar to us. It just kind of creates those natural connections. In conclusion, if you have the money to buy from designers, that's great. They really do put out some really, honestly beautiful clothes that are usually really, really high quality. But if you're like most people, like me, you don't have money for that sort of thing. But don't worry, fashion is run by people just like you and me anyway, so just have fun with your style and learn to develop your own sense of fashion. It's definitely a lot more rewarding than being pressured into buying something just because you are supposed to. Obviously, nothing's wrong with buying trends and watching bloggers like me for information. It's just clothes, and clothes are supposed to help you live your life, not run your life. I hope this video helped you feel inspired to wear what makes sense for you. We can definitely all be artists with fabric, so let's make something beautiful. If this message resonated with you, please give me a big thumbs up and definitely subscribe if you're new here. I put out fashion-related content whenever I want. See you next time.